Welcome back to Wheel of Photography. This is the second episode in a series where I let virtual wheels decide what gear I shoot with. If you missed it, I'll leave a link to the first episode somewhere around here. In that video, I go into far more detail into the reasoning behind this series and what I hope to accomplish with it. But for this episode, we're just going to dive right into it. So let's get to the wheels. It's kind of unexpected. You probably have never heard of this camera, and I actually haven't shot this in forever. This actually isn't my camera. This is the Samsung NX1000. In the digital age, this was my dad's first interchangeable lens camera. Prior to this, he'd just been using Coolpixes and whatnot. So this is kind of a throwback. He got this when we lived at our old house. And I want to say I was in either middle school or just beginning high school. So that's easily over 5 years ago. I don't even know if they sell these anymore. I don't even know if my dad knows that I have this. But if you're watching this, Dad, this is where this camera has been for however long. It's 20.3 megapixels. It's a mirrorless camera. The lens we've got on it right here. We never bothered to buy any other lenses. But this is a 20-50. And this is what I used to... Don't go trying to find this, but back in the days of DeviantArt, a lot of my banger photos were shot on this. This is what helped me leap into my love for photography when I started to take it a little more seriously in terms of a hobby and maybe even thinking about getting paid from it. I've never done any paid work with this, and it's not a bad camera by any means. I'd say that this is a camera that you would get to photograph anything and everything. So it's very much a family-oriented camera, at least in my eyes. This thing doesn't have a viewfinder, unfortunately, and it's only got a very few controls. Wow. Didn't think I'd be shooting this anytime soon. But why not? Let's get to it. I don't know what we're going to shoot. I think I'm going to go on a walk. So we'll see what we can create with this. All right. Peace. Hey, Brian from the future here. Past Brian was in a rush to get shooting, but I think we should discuss a few things about this camera before that. For starters, I forgot that this lens has seen better days. I dropped it back in the day and destroyed the autofocus, so I have to manually focus this one. Not a big deal, but something to keep in mind. That said, let me walk you through the kind of awkward but surprising shooting experience. All of the exposure controls are assigned to the front wheel, and the lack of a viewfinder is pretty jarring. I kept wanting to hold the camera up to my eye out of habit. I got used to it after a while, and after I set up manual focus assist, which just magnifies the image when you're turning the focus ring, I was pleasantly surprised by the back screen. It's clear, and I didn't have any issues nailing focus at any distance. In all, I would say that I had more fun making photos with the NX1000 than I thought I would. Anyway, let's really get to shooting this time. So I've shot this camera for a little over a week now, and I wanted to take a minute to talk about this lens. It's busted, but it's a Samsung 20-50 f3.5 to 5.6. Now I don't know if it's just me and the fact that I don't have much experience with ultra high-end glass, but I swear this thing is a little too good to be under $100 used. It's got some distortion on the wider end, but the center to edge sharpness isn't half bad. Check it out.
Welcome back, my friends. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're staying safe on these summer streets. Let me know what you think about those photos, and if you want more, follow me on Instagram at FreshmanBrian. Check this out, though. So, the NX1000 was first released in 2012. That makes this camera at least 9 years old as of 2021. When I was shooting this way back when, I loved this camera. It was the first quote-unquote real camera I had access to, where I could change the shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Perspective is everything, and I wish I could go back to the days when I focused less on gear and more on improving my skills. This is partially why I'm doing this series. I've always been bad at ending things, but I want to conclude these episodes by recapping the shooting experience and my personal reflections on the process. I'll start by showing you what I think is the best photo that I shot this week with the NX1000. This was captured during a walk I took around the neighborhood with my mom during golden hour. The light was perfect. No, this camera is not going to replace my A7 III or even my A7. It's a good camera, and I had a lot of fun making photos with it, but it doesn't have a viewfinder, and the shortcomings of the dynamic range become pretty obvious in Lightroom, even with the raw files. In addition to that, I'm not completely sold on the way this thing renders colors. Also, in low light, which I like to shoot in, I just don't think the NX1000 can keep up. In general, it's just kind of a slow camera. It's not meant for fast-paced work. It's an all-around camera that I know works really well in a family setting. For the hell of it, I shot all of the B-roll of me shooting with the NX1000, and what you're seeing now is also shot on the NX1000. It's gonna look a little worse than usual because it's outputting at 1080p and I'm working on a 4K timeline, but we'll just call it aesthetic. I don't want to turn this series into a bunch of rushed and unqualified camera reviews, so I am going to stop talking specs now. This brought me back to a simpler time, and it was really cool to see the kind of images I could capture with the camera I once mistakenly thought was limiting my creativity. Hopefully I'm a better storyteller than I used to be, and if there's any young photographers out there, let me be another lesson that you don't need the most expensive gear to get better fundamentally. I think that the moment we start to see our circumstances as only limitations, we stop ourselves from growing. This comes from a place of privilege, I know. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that gear doesn't matter. Of course it does, depending on the situation and what you're trying to create. I didn't have the most money or the best gear when I was growing up, and I still don't. But I think I could have saved a lot of money and time by just working with the tools that were available to me. Limitations can also be opportunities. It's just a matter of how you look at it. Take care and subscribe for more. That's all, folks.